In a small, quiet village in the heart of rural France, nestled among the rolling hills, there lived a woman named Elise. She was like any other mother-to-be, filled with dreams and hopes for the child she carried within her. But Elise's pregnancy was unlike any other. From the moment she found out she was expecting, things felt different. The villagers often whispered behind her back, wondering if the unusual signs were simply the result of an overactive imagination or if something deeper was at play. Elise noticed odd changes in her body, her cravings, her dreams, and even the way the animals in her small farm would behave around her. The chickens clucked more urgently, the dogs barked at nothing, and the cows, they seemed to watch her with a strange intensity. Despite the growing sense of unease, Elise remained calm. She knew she had to trust the process, no matter how strange it seemed. Her husband, Pierre, was supportive but also deeply concerned. He had seen the worry in her eyes, but his love for her kept him grounded. Then, one cold evening in December, something happened. Elise's contractions came suddenly, without warning, and they were unlike anything she had ever felt. She held her breath as the pain intensified. The moonlight streamed through the window, casting an eerie glow across the room. It was in that moment that the unthinkable happened. With a gasp of disbelief, Elise gave birth not to a child, but to a small, trembling goat. Pierre was the first to scream. His voice echoed through their small cottage as he rushed to her side. But Elise simply stared at the creature in her arms. A strange calm settled over her. It was a goat, yes, but there was something more to it, something beyond what the world could understand. The villagers, once skeptical, now arrived at her door, their faces filled with both awe and fear. Some said it was a curse. Others believed it was a divine message. But Elise, still cradling the goat, felt a deep connection, something profound and unspoken, that whispered to her heart. She knew this was not a punishment. It was a sign she had yet to fully understand. As the news spread, whispers of this miraculous birth reached every corner of the village. Some came to see the goat, others to offer their prayers, and still more came to offer judgment. But Elise and Pierre only saw one thing: a new life, fragile and pure, that needed love, care, and acceptance. But the journey that lay ahead was not going to be easy. Elise's world had changed in an instant, and with it, the fate of the village. The birth of the goat was not just an oddity. It was the beginning of a journey that would challenge everything they had ever known. Would they be able to accept this miracle? Or would the world push them into a corner, forcing them to question everything they believed? Days passed, but the oddity of the birth never left the village. Elise and Pierre kept to themselves, their once peaceful lives now overshadowed by the strange creature that had entered their world. The goat, which they named Sapphira, was unlike any animal they had ever seen. Its eyes, large and knowing, seemed to stare right into the souls of those who looked at it. The villagers were torn. Some, like the old priest Father Jacques, whispered that it was a sign from Allah. A test, perhaps. Others, including the young women in the village, believed that it was nothing more than a curse, a punishment for something unknown. The whispers became louder with each passing day, but it was the forest that called to Elise. One evening, as twilight bathed the village in its soft, purple glow, Elise found herself standing at the edge of the thick, ancient woods that bordered their farm. The air was cool, and the scent of pine and earth filled her lungs. Sapphira stood beside her, calm, as if it too felt the pull. Elise didn't know why she was drawn to this place, but the pull was undeniable. It was as if the forest was waiting for her, waiting to show her something. Taking a deep breath, she stepped into the woods, the trees towering above her like silent guardians. As she walked deeper, the sounds of the village faded into nothingness, replaced only by the soft rustling of leaves and the occasional snap of a twig underfoot. The deeper she walked, the more vivid the sense of urgency grew within her. There was something important here, something that Allah was trying to reveal. Her heart raced, but she pressed on, trusting the unspoken guidance that led her. And then she saw it. A clearing opened before her, bathed in the light of the setting sun. In the center stood a massive stone, covered in moss, with strange markings carved into its surface. Elise felt the air grow heavier, as if the very earth itself was holding its breath. As she approached the stone, Sapphira stood still, its gaze fixed upon the markings. Elise knelt beside the stone, running her fingers over the symbols, which seemed to pulse under her touch. The markings were ancient, unfamiliar, yet something within her recognized them. A voice, soft and gentle, filled her mind. "This is the path," it whispered. "Follow it." Elise's heart pounded as the voice faded. Was it Aloe speaking to her, or was it something else? The forest seemed to close in around her, but she stood her ground. She had come this far. There was no turning back. She looked down at Sapphira, who was now standing beside her, its eyes glowing faintly in the dimming light. It was clear now. The goat was no ordinary creature. It was the key to something far greater than she had ever imagined. With renewed determination, Elise rose to her feet. The path ahead was uncertain, but she would follow it, no matter where it led. Whatever the truth of Sapphira's birth, she was ready to face it. And so, with a last look at the stone, Elise turned back towards the village, knowing that the journey she had just begun would change everything. Elise returned home that evening, her heart heavy with the weight of what she had discovered in the forest. She couldn't shake the feeling that she had just uncovered the first part of a much larger mystery. The stone, the markings, and the voice in her mind. It was all connected to Sapphira, to the strange birth, and to the fate of the village. But what was the true meaning behind it all? Pierre noticed the change in her as soon as she walked through the door. His eyes searched her face for any sign of the answers that had eluded them both since Sapphira's birth. Elise opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. She wanted to explain everything, the voice, the stone, the strange sense of purpose she now felt, but she couldn't. It was as if the truth was still hidden, just out of her reach. "We need to talk," Pierre said, his voice low and serious. Elise nodded, leading him into their small kitchen. They sat at the wooden table, the soft glow of the lantern casting flickering shadows on the walls. Sapphira stood in the corner, silently observing them both, as if it understood the gravity of the moment. "I know something has changed," Pierre continued, his gaze never leaving her face. "The villagers are starting to talk more. They're worried. They think this goat is a curse." Elise's heart sank. The fear in his voice mirrored the fear in her own heart. But she couldn't let the villagers' superstition control their lives. She had to find out the truth. "I went to the forest today," Elise began, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside her. "I found a stone with markings on it, and I heard a voice. It told me to follow the path. I think this is all part of something much bigger." Pierre's eyes widened in disbelief. He had heard the rumors, the whispers that had begun to spread like wildfire. But he had never imagined his wife would actually find something so mystical. "Do you think it's a sign from Aloe?" he asked, his voice trembling with uncertainty. Elise nodded slowly. "Yes, I believe it is. But I don't know what it means yet. I don't know where it leads. But I can't ignore it, Pierre. I need to find out what this is all about." Pierre fell silent for a moment, his eyes flickering to Sapphira, who was now standing near the window, its eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. He could see it now, the connection between his wife and the goat. It was as if they were both part of something greater, something that had yet to be revealed. "We'll face it together," Pierre said quietly, taking her hand in his. "Whatever this is, we'll figure it out. But we need to be careful. The village, they're afraid." "I know," Elise replied, squeezing his hand. "But fear won't help us understand. We have to find the truth." The next morning, Elise and Pierre set out to speak with Father Jacques. The old priest had lived in the village longer than anyone, and his wisdom was respected by all. If anyone could help them make sense of the strange happenings, it would be him. When they arrived at the church, Father Jacques was waiting for them. His face was grave, his eyes tired from the weight of the rumors that had begun to spread. He had heard the stories, just like everyone else, and he knew that something needed to be done. "I've been praying," Father Jacques said softly, leading them into the quiet sanctuary. And I believe that what has happened is no accident. This is a test from Aloe, but we must tread carefully. The signs are all here, but they are not yet clear. Elise listened intently as Father Jacques spoke, his words echoing in her mind. A test. She had felt it, too. This wasn't just a strange birth. It was a divine message, something that would change the course of their lives forever. You must be prepared, Father Jacques warned. This path will not be easy. There will be those who oppose you, who will try to turn you away from what you are meant to do. But remember, Aloe works in mysterious ways. The goat is not a curse. It is a gift, a key to unlocking something greater. Elise nodded, the weight of the priest's words sinking in. This was only the beginning. Whatever the path ahead held, she would face it with courage. And she would face it with Pierre by her side. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Saphira was no ordinary creature, and neither was her birth. Together, Elise and Pierre would uncover the truth, and in doing so, they would unlock a future they had never imagined. The days that followed were filled with a strange sense of anticipation. Elise couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to happen, something that would reveal the true nature of Saphira and the mysterious path she had started down. Every night, she would lay in bed, staring out the window, watching the moon rise over the fields. It was as if the universe itself was holding its breath, waiting for the right moment. Pierre, too, seemed restless. He worked on the farm during the day, but his mind was elsewhere. They both knew that their lives had been irrevocably changed, but neither of them understood exactly how or why. The goat had become a symbol of something greater than just an animal. It was a sign, a key to something hidden deep within their souls, something that had yet to be uncovered. It was on the fourth evening after their conversation with Father Jacques that the first real change occurred. Elise was in the barn, tending to the animals, when she heard a soft, distant sound, a voice, low and murmuring. It was almost as if the wind itself was speaking to her. She turned, expecting to see Pierre, but he was nowhere in sight. The voice came again, louder this time, and Elise felt a chill run down her spine. "Saphira," she whispered, looking toward the goat, which stood at the far end of the barn, staring directly at her with its unblinking eyes. The air around her seemed to shift, and the faintest glow began to surround the creature, as if the barn was caught in some ethereal light. Elise took a hesitant step forward, her heart racing in her chest. As she reached out to touch Saphira, the voice came once more, this time clear and distinct. "Follow the path of the moonlight." Elise froze. The words echoed in her mind, and for a moment, she didn't know what to do. Was it Aloe speaking to her again? Or was it something else, something ancient and powerful, guiding her toward a destiny she had yet to understand? Without thinking, she turned and left the barn, her feet carrying her toward the open fields. The moonlight bathed the earth in a soft, silvery glow, and Elise felt as if the very land beneath her feet was alive with energy. Saphira followed her, its hooves making no sound on the grass as it walked beside her, as if it too understood the importance of this moment. The path of the moonlight seemed to stretch before her, leading her toward the forest once more. Elise's heart beat faster with each step, but she didn't hesitate. This was the moment she had been waiting for. This was the path Aloe had promised her, the path that would lead to the truth. As she entered the forest, the air grew thick with the scent of damp earth and pine. The trees loomed overhead, their branches swaying gently in the wind. And then, in the distance, she saw it, a light, faint but growing brighter with every step she took. It was as if the moon itself had come down to the earth, casting a beam of pure light on a clearing ahead. Elise approached the clearing, her breath catching in her throat. And there, standing in the center of the light, was the stone. The same stone she had found weeks ago, its markings now glowing faintly under the moon's gaze. But there was something different about it this time. The symbols on the stone had shifted. They were no longer just lines and curves. They were alive, moving, pulsating with a rhythm Elise could feel deep within her bones. The markings seemed to form words, though the language was unlike anything she had ever seen before. It was as if the stone was speaking to her, urging her to understand. Saphira stepped forward, its hooves clicking against the stone as it reached out to touch the markings with its nose. Elise gasped, her heart racing. The stone seemed to respond to the goat's touch, its glow intensifying as if the two were connected in some way. Suddenly, the voice returned, louder and clearer than ever before. You are the chosen one. The path of light begins with you. Elise's knees went weak, and she sank to the ground, her hands trembling as she touched the stone. She didn't fully understand what was happening, but she knew one thing for certain. She was part of something much greater than herself. Saphira had not been born by accident. It was meant to be. The goat, the stone, the voice, it was all connected, and Elise was the key. As the light from the stone enveloped her, Elise felt a surge of power within her, a knowledge she had never known before. She was no longer just a mother to a strange creature. She was part of a prophecy, a path that would lead her to answers that had been hidden for generations. But the journey was far from over. Elise knew that there were dangers ahead, obstacles she would have to face. But with Saphira by her side, she felt ready. Whatever lay ahead, she would walk the path of light. And in doing so, she would uncover the truth behind the mystery of the goat. The light from the stone faded as the moon began to wane, but the power it had unlocked within Elise remained. As she stood in the clearing, still trembling from the experience, she knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with shadows and unknown dangers. But one thing was clear. She had been chosen for something far greater than she could have ever imagined. Saphira, still by her side, nuzzled Elise gently, as if offering comfort in the face of the unknown. The connection between them had deepened, and Elise could feel the bond between them, stronger than ever. She wasn't alone in this journey. Saphira was her guide, her protector, and perhaps even her salvation. Elise took a deep breath and turned to head back toward the village. The wind had picked up, and the trees whispered around her as she walked. The path of light had revealed itself to her, but she knew she had only begun to uncover the truth. There was so much more to discover, so many layers to peel back, and she could feel the weight of it pressing down on her. As she entered the village, she was met with a mix of stares and whispers. The villagers had heard the rumors, of course, but now, seeing Elise return with Saphira at her side, they were beginning to understand that this was no ordinary event. The goat, this strange, mystical creature, was not a curse, but a messenger. Elise knew that soon. They would all have to face the truth together. She made her way to Father Jacques' house, her heart heavy with the knowledge that the priest was the only one who might help her make sense of the vision she had experienced. The forest, the stone, the voice, it was all leading somewhere, but where? And what was Aloe's plan? When she arrived at the church, Father Jacques was waiting for her. His weathered face looked tired, but there was a spark in his eyes, as if he knew that the time had come for the answers to be revealed. Elise, he said softly, gesturing for her to sit. I have been praying for guidance, and the signs have become clearer. The path you are on is not a simple one, but I believe it is the path of salvation, not just for you, but for the entire village. Elise listened intently, her heart racing. Salvation? She had been thinking about her own journey. But what if this was bigger than just her? What if the village, the people she had known her whole life, were also a part of this prophecy? Father, Elise began, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside her. I saw the stone again in the forest. The markings, they've changed. I felt a connection to it, to Saphira. And I heard the voice again. It said I was the chosen one. Father Jacques nodded slowly, as if he had been expecting this. You are part of something ancient, Elise. The goat, Saphira, is not just an animal. It is a symbol, a messenger from Aloe. The path you are walking is one that has been foretold, though the details have been lost to time. But what does it mean? What is the prophecy? Elise asked, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and anticipation. The priest took a deep breath. The prophecy speaks of a time when darkness will fall upon the land. The people will be lost, wandering in the shadow of despair. But the chosen one, guided by the light of truth, will lead them to salvation. And the goat is the key. It holds the power to unlock the final stage of the prophecy. Elise felt a cold chill wash over her. Darkness? Despair? She had thought her own life had been turned upside down by Saphira's birth. But now she realized that what was happening to her was far greater than she had ever imagined. The fate of the village, and perhaps the world, was resting on her shoulders. "But I don't understand," Elise whispered, her heart aching with the weight of it all. "How can I lead them? I'm just a mother. I don't have the power to save anyone." Father Jacques looked at her with compassion. "It is not your power that will save them, Elise. It is your faith, your willingness to trust in Allah's plan. You have been chosen because of your heart. You will find the strength within yourself to lead, even when you feel weak. The prophecy will unfold in its own time, but you must be ready." Elise sat in silence, trying to process everything Father Jacques had said. The truth was beginning to settle in, but it didn't make it any easier to accept. She was the chosen one, the one who would lead the village through a coming darkness. But how could she possibly be ready for such a monumental task? Suddenly, the door to the church opened, and Pierre stepped inside, his face pale and drawn. "Elise," he said urgently, his voice shaking, "you need to come quickly. There's something happening in the village. The people, they're frightened. They're talking about the darkness that's coming." Elise stood up, her heart pounding in her chest. The storm was gathering, both outside and within the village. The time had come to face the truth, to walk the path of the chosen one. With Saphira by her side, Elise knew that the journey would be perilous, but it was a journey she could not turn away from. The darkness was coming, and she would have to face it head-on. The village was in a state of unrest, and Elise could feel the tension in the air as soon as she stepped outside the church. The whispers of fear had turned into loud, frantic conversations. The villagers had gathered in the town square, their faces filled with worry and confusion. News had spread quickly that something ominous was coming, an unknown force that threatened to swallow everything in its path. Elise's heart raced as she made her way through the crowd, her eyes scanning the faces of the people she had known all her life. Fear had gripped them, and she could feel the weight of their anxiety pressing down on her shoulders. They were looking to her for answers, but she had none to give. "Elise, you've come," Father Jacques called out from the center of the square. His face was pale, his eyes wide with a mixture of dread and urgency. "The time has arrived. The darkness is closer than we thought." Elise swallowed hard, trying to steady her breath. "What do you mean, Father? What is this darkness?" Father Jacques stepped closer, lowering his voice. "It's a force that has been waiting in the shadows for centuries. The prophecy speaks of it, a time when the earth itself will tremble and the skies will darken. The people will lose their way, and the light of truth will be obscured. But you, Elise, you are the key. You must lead us, for we are running out of time." Elise's mind raced. She had known this was coming, but hearing the words spoken aloud made it all the more real. The prophecy, the voice in the forest, the stone, it had all been leading to this moment. She was the chosen one, but what did that really mean? How could she possibly lead the village against something so vast, so overwhelming? As she tried to find the strength within herself, a low rumble echoed through the air, followed by a sudden shift in the atmosphere. The wind picked up, howling like a warning. The sky darkened, and a chill swept over the village. The villagers cried out in fear, some falling to their knees, while others clutched their loved ones for comfort. Saphira, standing quietly at Elise's side, suddenly began to glow, its eyes shining with an otherworldly light. Elise felt a surge of energy flow through her as the goat's presence seemed to connect with something deep within her. It was as if she could feel the heartbeat of the earth itself, resonating with the same rhythm as her own. "This is it," Father Jacques said, his voice trembling. "The darkness is upon us. You must take the first step, Elise. The path will not be easy, but the light is still there. You must walk it." Elise nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. The villagers looked to her, their eyes filled with hope and fear, waiting for her to make the first move. She knew that the journey she was about to take would change everything. There was no turning back now. "Follow me," she said, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her. "We will face this together." With Saphira by her side, Elise led the villagers toward the edge of the village, toward the forest and the stone that had begun to reveal its secrets. She could feel the pull of the unknown guiding her, urging her to trust in the path that had been set before her. As they entered the forest, the air grew thick with an eerie silence. The trees, once familiar, now seemed to loom over them, casting long shadows in the moonlight. Elise's breath quickened, but she pushed forward, knowing that they were on the verge of something monumental. The path ahead was uncertain, but she had no choice but to follow it. When they reached the clearing where the stone lay, Elise felt a sense of recognition wash over her. The markings on the stone had changed again, glowing brighter than before. The air around them seemed to hum with energy, and Elise could feel the earth beneath her feet tremble. She stepped forward, her hand reaching out to touch the stone. As soon as her fingers made contact, a blinding light erupted from the stone, enveloping her in its warmth. The villagers gasped in awe, some shielding their eyes from the intensity of the light. But Elise did not flinch. She felt a deep sense of connection to the stone, as if it were a part of her. A voice filled her mind once more, this time louder and clearer than ever before. "You are the light that will guide them. The darkness can only be defeated by the strength within you. Trust in yourself, Elise. Trust in Saphira. The path of salvation begins now." Elise closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. She could feel the power of the stone coursing through her, and with it came a surge of clarity. She understood now. She was not just a mother to Saphira. She was the chosen one, the key to unlocking the light that would guide her people out of the darkness. With newfound resolve, she opened her eyes and looked at the villagers. "We must stand together," she said. "The darkness may be strong, but the light within us is stronger. Together, we will overcome it." As Elise spoke, the light from the stone grew even brighter, and the darkness that had been creeping across the sky began to retreat. The villagers stood tall, their fear replaced with a sense of hope and unity. But the battle was far from over. The darkness was still out there, waiting to strike. And Elise knew that the journey ahead would test them all. But with Saphira by her side and the strength of the village behind her, she was ready to face whatever came next. The villagers returned to their homes, their hearts filled with a newfound hope. The darkness had retreated for now, but Elise knew that it was not gone for good. It was only waiting for the right moment to strike again. The prophecy had not yet played out, and they were far from the end of their journey. The light they had found in the stone, the strength they had discovered within themselves, it was just the beginning. Elise sat by the fire that night, Saphira resting beside her. The goat's presence was comforting, a silent reminder of the journey ahead. The villagers had gathered in their homes, but the night was heavy with uncertainty. They had seen the power of the stone, the light that had pushed back the darkness, but they all knew that they had only scratched the surface of what was to come. Pierre sat beside Elise, his hand resting gently on hers. "What happens now?" he asked quietly, his voice filled with the weight of the unknown. Elise looked at him, her eyes filled with determination. "We wait. The darkness will return, but when it does, we will be ready." The prophecy spoke of a battle between light and darkness, and we must be prepared to face it. But as the days passed, Elise began to notice something strange. The village, once filled with life, now seemed to grow quieter with each passing hour. The people were no longer filled with the same energy they had had before the darkness arrived. It was as if the weight of the prophecy was slowly sinking into their hearts, making them wary and fearful. They no longer looked at her with hope. They looked at her with expectation that she would lead them, but without truly understanding what that meant. Elise felt the pressure mounting. How could she lead them when she wasn't sure herself of what she was meant to do? The darkness had not been vanquished. It had only been pushed back, and she could feel its cold grip tightening once more. The stone, while powerful, had only been a glimpse of what was to come. The true test lay ahead. One evening, just before dusk, Elise felt the pull again, the same pull that had led her to the forest, to the stone. It was calling her, a deep and unspoken beckoning that she could no longer ignore. She rose from the fire, her heart beating in rhythm with the call, and walked toward the village's edge, with Sapphira following closely behind. This time, the forest seemed different. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth, but it was also heavy with the promise of something dark lurking within. The trees towered above her, casting long shadows that seemed to follow her every step. Elise quickened her pace, feeling the weight of the unseen eyes upon her. As she reached the clearing, the stone stood in its place, its markings now glowing with a dim, eerie light. But there was something else in the clearing, a figure cloaked in shadow, standing at the stone. The figure was tall, its form barely discernible in the fading light, but Elise could feel its presence like a weight pressing down on her chest. "Sapphira," Elise whispered, her voice barely audible. The goat stepped forward, standing between her and the figure, its eyes glowing with an intensity that matched the strange light from the stone. The figure turned slowly, and Elise gasped. It was not human. The creature before her was a dark, twisted version of the very essence of darkness itself. Its eyes were empty, black pits, and its form seemed to shift with the shadows, as if it were made of the very darkness that had threatened the village. "You are the chosen one," the creature said, its voice low and cold, like a whisper from the grave. "But you are not ready. The light you cling to is weak. You cannot defeat me. No one can." Elise's heart pounded in her chest. She felt fear course through her veins, but she refused to back down. "I won't let you destroy everything," she said, her voice shaking but resolute. "I will fight for my people, for the light that lives in all of us." The creature's laugh echoed through the forest, sending a chill down Elise's spine. "You have no power. You are merely a vessel, a puppet in the hands of fate. You cannot change what has already been written." But Elise did not falter. She reached down and placed her hand on Sapphira's head. The goat looked up at her, its eyes filled with understanding. Elise could feel the connection between them, the bond that had been forged in the moment of Sapphira's birth. It was not just a goat. It was her guide, her protector, the key to the light that could defeat the darkness. With a deep breath, Elise stepped forward, her heart filled with determination. "I may not have the power you think I need," she said, "but I have something stronger. I have hope. I have the love of my people, and I will not let you win." The creature snarled, its shadowy form writhing in anger. "You are a fool," it hissed, "but you will learn. The darkness will consume you all." With a flick of its hand, the darkness around them swirled, thickening like a storm. But Elise stood firm, the light of the stone shining brighter than before. She could feel the power of the light growing within her, filling her heart with courage. This was her fight, and she would not let the darkness claim her or her village. Sapphira stepped forward, its glowing eyes locking onto the creature. Together, they stood as a beacon of light in the midst of the encroaching darkness. The battle had just begun. The air around Elise seemed to tremble with the intensity of the moment. The creature, an embodiment of pure darkness, loomed before her, its cold presence pushing against the warmth of the light that surrounded her and Sapphira. The forest, once familiar and welcoming, had transformed into a battleground, its trees twisted and bent as if reacting to the power that had been unleashed. Elise could feel the weight of the darkness pressing down on her, but she refused to let it consume her. With each breath, she drew strength from the light within her, the light that had guided her this far. It was the same light that had filled her heart with courage and purpose, even when she felt unworthy of the task before her. Sapphira stood beside her, its glowing eyes unwavering, as if the goat knew the true depth of the battle that lay ahead. Elise reached down and placed her hand gently on the creature's back. In that moment, she felt an overwhelming sense of connection, not just to Sapphira, but to the earth itself, the forest, the stone, the very land beneath her feet. They were all part of this struggle. And so was she. Elise, the creature hissed, its voice like the scrape of claws on stone. You are too weak. The light you think you possess will not save you. It is fleeting, just as the hope of your people is fleeting. I will consume it all. Your village, your world, everything will belong to the darkness. The shadows around them seemed to writhe and swirl, closing in on Elise and Saphira. The air grew thick with cold, and Elise felt her breath grow shallow, her body weighed down by the oppressive force that surrounded her. But she could not afford to be afraid. The prophecy, the voice in her mind, the stone, it had all led her to this moment. She was the chosen one, and she would not let the darkness claim the world she loved. With a deep breath, Elise stepped forward, her feet firm on the ground. She extended her hand, reaching for the light within her, the light that had been kindled by her faith, her love, and her connection to Saphira. "Aloe," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the roaring wind. "Grant me the strength to face this darkness. Guide me, as you have before." The stone behind her began to glow, its light intensifying with each word she spoke. Elise felt the warmth of the light flood her body, filling her with a sense of purpose she had never known. She was not alone in this fight. Aloe was with her. Saphira let out a low, melodic sound, as if answering Elise's call. The goat stepped forward, its eyes now blazing with a brilliant, pure light that seemed to cut through the darkness surrounding them. The creature roared in fury, its form shifting and twisting as it tried to smother the light. But Elise stood her ground, her heart filled with the strength of her conviction. She knew that this battle would not be won with brute force alone. It would be won with the power of hope, the power of love, and the power of the light within her. With a surge of energy, Elise raised her hand high, her fingers glowing with the light of the stone. The light from Saphira intensified, and the two forces, one of darkness, one of light, clashed in a blinding explosion of energy. The ground shook beneath their feet, and the trees around them groaned in protest as the battle raged on. Elise could feel the darkness trying to pull her down, to swallow her whole, but she refused to let it. She focused on the light within her, drawing on every ounce of strength she had. The creature howled in anger, its form disintegrating as the light from Elise and Saphira enveloped it. With each passing second, the darkness shrank, pulled into the light like a shadow, fleeing from the sun. The wind howled, the trees groaned, and the ground beneath them trembled as the battle reached its peak. And then, with one final, deafening roar, the darkness was gone. The air cleared, the oppressive weight lifted, and the forest seemed to breathe again. Elise stood there, her chest heaving with exhaustion, but her heart was light. She had done it. The darkness had been defeated, but the victory came at a cost. Saphira, once glowing with intense light, now stood motionless beside her. The goat's body seemed to shimmer for a moment before it collapsed, its form beginning to fade. Elise rushed to its side, her heart pounding in her chest. "No," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Please, Saphira, you can't leave me." But as the goat's form dissolved into the light, a sense of peace settled over Elise. Saphira had not truly disappeared. The creature had given everything to protect her, to guide her, to help her fulfill her purpose. And now, it was time for her to carry on, for the light of hope had been restored. Elise stood alone in the clearing, the battle won, but the journey far from over. She had saved her village, saved the world from the darkness, but there was still much to be done. The prophecy was complete, but the story was far from finished. She looked up at the sky, now clear and filled with the light of a new dawn. The path ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear: she was ready. The sun began to rise over the village, its warm light casting long shadows across the land, dispelling the last remnants of the darkness that had nearly consumed them. Elise stood in the clearing, her heart still racing from the intensity of the battle. But now, as the light bathed the earth in its golden glow, she felt a quiet peace settle within her. The darkness had been defeated, but the cost had been great. Saphira was gone. its light now a part of the very earth they had fought to protect. Elise closed her eyes and whispered a prayer of gratitude. The goat had been more than just an animal. It had been her guide, her protector, and her friend. Without it, she wouldn't have been able to fulfill her destiny. She would carry its memory with her, always. As the villagers began to emerge from their homes, drawn by the light that now filled the village, they saw the change in the world around them. The air was clearer, the sky brighter, and the land seemed to hum with a new energy. The darkness had been banished, and the prophecy had been fulfilled. Father Jacques approached Elise, his face filled with reverence. "You did it," he said softly. "The village is safe. You've done what no one else could have." Elise nodded, her heart heavy but grateful. "It wasn't just me," she said, her voice steady. "It was the light that lives in all of us. The hope, the love, the strength we have when we stand together. We fought as one, and that's what made us strong." The priest smiled, his eyes filled with pride. "You have become the light for all of us. You are the true beacon of hope." But Elise didn't feel like a beacon. She felt like a mother who had lost something precious, someone who had given everything for the greater good. She had fulfilled the prophecy, yes, but it was a role she had never asked for, and one she had not fully understood until the very end. As she walked back toward the village, Pierre met her halfway, his face filled with relief. He took her hands in his, and for the first time in a long while, he looked at her without fear, without doubt. There was only love and gratitude in his eyes. "You did it," he said softly, his voice thick with emotion. "I never doubted you for a second, Elise. You were always the one who could save us." Elise smiled weakly, the weight of everything she had endured finally sinking in. "I couldn't have done it without you, Pierre. Without all of you." The villagers gathered around her, their faces filled with admiration and respect. But Elise knew that their gratitude wasn't for her alone. It was for the collective strength they had all found in one another. Together, they had overcome the darkness. As the days passed, the village began to rebuild. The crops grew once again, the animals thrived, and the people regained their joy. Life slowly returned to the peaceful rhythm it had once known, but now there was a deeper sense of unity and understanding. They had faced the darkness together, and now they had found the light. Elise often visited the clearing where Saphira had given its last gift, the stone now quiet and still. Sometimes she would sit there in silence, reflecting on the journey that had brought her here. The stone still glowed faintly, its markings now a permanent part of the earth, a testament to the power of the light that had overcome the darkness. One day, as Elise sat by the stone, she felt a familiar warmth in the air, a soft breeze that seemed to whisper her name. She smiled, knowing that Saphira's spirit was still with her, that the light they had shared was eternal. The goat may have faded from the world, but its legacy lived on in the hearts of those it had touched. Elise knew her journey wasn't over. There would be other challenges, other battles to fight. But for now, she was at peace. The village was safe. The darkness had been defeated, and the light would guide them all, just as it had guided her. With a final look at the stone, Elise stood and turned toward the village, the rising sun casting a golden glow over the land. She was ready for whatever came next, and whatever it was, she would face it with the strength of the light inside her, and with the love and hope of the people who had stood beside her.